up how to sync two devices together. Pro Tools is one, MPC is the other. This is pretty much streamlined for you users. There's other sequencers, arrangement things, rolling drum machines, different drum machines all over the globe. But this is the basic how-to when it comes to beat making. Alright, so back to the video. What we're going to do here is, number one, I'm going to zoom in on screen and I'm going to show you everything you need. Number one, you need a MIDI interface. Number two, if you don't have a MIDI interface, you may have a keyboard controller that can act as a MIDI interface, or you just need to go to your local music store and you can buy one for like $39.99, which is a really good deal. So if you're gonna do this, I want you to understand Pro Tools is going to become the master of the process, the synchronization, and the MPC is going to be what they consider slave mode, so it goes along with it. So master and slave, it goes back and forth, and it should stay in time. So what they mean by that is these two should be absolutely in sync. But the problem is, which really causes a lot of frustration with people, which I'm really going to dive into in this video, is it's off. So you hit play in Pro Tools and it starts, and then the MPC's like up here and it starts early. Like in my case, the MPC's actually early, so I got to go negative samples to pull it back. So let's talk about the first thing we need to do, and I'm just going to go right at it. So in the MPC, in the Pro Tools rig, we're going to go to setup, we're going to go to MIDI, and we're going to go to MIDI beat clock. The thing is this, like I said, you can use a MIDI keyboard. You just got to make sure that it can double as a USB to MIDI interface. So check your manual and make sure that you see that it can do that, because if you can't, you're going to be really having a headache here. That was one thing that I wanted to cover in this video. USB to MIDI out. It has to be able to take the USB information that it's seeing from the computer and transfer that MIDI out its output port on the back of the keyboard. If not, like I said, you can just go to your local music store. Most of them carry a MIDI interface. MIDI interfaces are not super expensive, so you're not going to be breaking the bank over it, but it's still, it's a few bucks. So with that being said, I need to go in, once again, setup, I go to MIDI, and then I go to MIDI beat clock. And I check mark the one that has the MIDI out cable. So whatever's MIDI out of my Pro Tools, in this case it's the Axiom, and that's feeding the MIDI input of the MPC. So that's pretty much straightforward there. The other thing is this. If you look at my session, so if I go to Setup, Session, they're all under the Setup tab. If I go to Session, I can see that I have 30 timecode rate of drop frame. If you look at the MPC here in a second, you're going to see that frame rate. I've had very good luck with both 30 frames per second and 30 frames per second drop. So in my advice is to make it 30 drop, just because it sounds cool, especially for you beat makers. I'm just messing with you, dude. It's what the MPC is using over there. So 30 frames per second drop. So anyways, and then that's the two things that you got to make sure work. Now, the way we're running the MPC, you do not need to put it online. You do not have to do any of that good stuff, because we're going to be routing it back in. And this is the best way that I know how to do it. And this is the most efficient and the most creative way, where I don't feel like I'm losing my sanity. Because the other way, I feel like I'm like, what in the world, dude? The transport's all jacked up. I'm not hitting play on this. And I've just never got it to work very stable the other way. So now, if you look at the MPC, like I said, I'm going to do this really quick so you guys can get on to making music. So I'm going to leave it out, zoomed out a little bit, so you can see the buttons as well. So let me do I have to hit that button? It's a dope sample. Dude, that's a sweet sample right there. So what we're going to do here, though, is I'm not doing anything yet. I'm going to hit menu, and then at the top, you have MIDI clock, and you have settings. So here's your little gear, almost like an iPhone. You see your settings page, but at the top it's under menu. Hit menu, highlight it, and then go to settings. Now when I click settings, it's going to come up to this. Now this is where I want you to understand that I had an issue trying to activate the MIDI clock with the touchscreen. Like when I touched it like this, like I double clicked and then I just clicked on that again and double clicked and it didn't activate for some reason. It was really weird. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's just the way it is. I had to go to the actual enter button on the MPC. I hit enter, so I'm going to do that again just to verify. So I hit enter, and the MIDI clock is what we want. There's two types though. There's MMC, so there's MIDI time code. That's the one with the online transport for Pro Tools. What I want to use it as is MIDI clock. So another thing is with the jog, with the scroll up and down arrows, I can't get to this receive MMC. Factory default, when you get this thing new, this thing is not checked. So that's why we had to go to the settings page. So the two things you got to do on the MPC to get it to receive information from the Pro Tools MIDI out is literally check mark this box, receive MMC, and then receive MIDI clock. And this thing's ready to roll. The next thing is this. If you're a newbie to production and you just got into this, you have to time align the beats per minute. Okay, you have to manually do this. It doesn't just all of a sudden see it, change the beats per minute. Now if we did I believe if we did the time code, I believe it would. But in this case, this is the most efficient as a producer, and I'm going to show you what happens. So when I hit play, this is really cool. I hope you guys really like this and get something out of this video. And even if you don't have an MPC, this can work for other gear. So don't just think it's just this, you know. So let me push play. If you see my little transport, that little personas, give me a second here. So what should happen is when I hit play on the transport, it should activate the MPC to start playing. It's playing. It's beautiful, okay? The problem's this. It's late, okay? So that's not cool. So a lot of guys get to this point and say, forget it. This is horrible. I don't want to do this anymore. So let me record it. I'm going to record a piece in. So the way to record it is we have to take the audio outputs of the MPC and feed them back into my interface, just like you would a line amp or a keyboard or a microphone. Same thing. But now you're just triggering it from Pro Tools. You're doing nothing different as far as the other way of hooking it up. So when we hit record and we hit play, and I hit stop, I'm going to notice a huge, huge delay. Now watch on screen. I'll show you what that looks like. And then we can end this video and you can go try this for yourself if you have a beat machine. So if you zoom in on that waveform, you notice the front of it? It's a little late. So the way to actually calculate this, I have to show you the top bar too. It's time for a new tripod up in here. So if you look at that waveform, it's late. So in the grand scheme of things, to a poor player, that doesn't matter. But if I'm in here with a world-renowned drummer and an awesome, you know, an awesome on-time player, we're in trouble. They're going to be like, dude, just take that drum machine and get it out of here. So the thing is this. What I have to do is I have to zoom in, okay? And as I zoom in, I can see how many samples I'm off. So as it locked, if I zoom all the way into this, that's about close, and we can even get closer, but I have to highlight this, okay? And I got to drag it all the way to the beginning of the session. Now let me show you something. If you look at your top bar, it says bars, beats, minute, second, time code, feet, in frames, and samples. What I want to do is I want to go to samples. Now the way that I measure it is I don't do a bunch of calculations and math in my head. I just look over from this number over to the right, and since I'm at the start point, which is 0, I see the end point of the beginning of that sound is 764. Okay? So if I adjust it 764, this is where my offset samples come in. Once again, I go to MIDI, I go to MIDI beat clock, I go to where my USB Axiom port was, and I'm going to offset this by -764. Now you're not done yet, okay? What I noticed, if you want to even get it even more precise, if that's even I know I'm not an English major, but if you want a little more precision, now when I hit play and record, I mean, look at that. If I put that in grid mode, dude, that's pretty on point. Look at that on the transients. It's pretty great. But the problem is it's probably still a tiny bit off. Or maybe it's not. No, it's not. So, in the grand scheme of things, that's about as good as it's going to get. I might be one sample off, okay? But man, I'm going to tell you right now, that just changed everything. So check this out. So as a producer, if I want to just play back and get a new concept, a new idea, as we did here, let me activate this instrument track. So we have Superior Drummer, and we wanted to add, you know, some percussion. Check it out. So now that's actually playing the percussion of the Superior Drummer alongside the MPC. So it's triggering everything at the same time. And you can tell it's on point. Listen to it. I mean, dude, I just started that. I just became super inspired, by the way, too. Because then I can re-record all that in. Like, that part right there with that drum roll, that was pretty sweet. Check it out. And then this doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So now, as I'm being creative, I don't have to keep turning around and click, 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 play. Click, 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 play. That's very, very, very destructive to your creativeness, I promise you. And if you're watching this video and you produce, you know what I mean. So the other thing is this. Now I can just let the system be the system, forget about the MPC until it's time to use it. So when I highlight in here, I can go to my grid, I can make a loop, whatever I want to do, and then I can be creative in Pro Tools. A lot of times this comes in handy when somebody sends us a session and says, hey Doug, could you produce? Could you produce something on top of it? Could you do some chops? We have a chop feature in here in the MPC. It's really cool. So we can do some chops to your vocals. We can send this out to the audio in of the MPC, so we're all synced together, and we know for a fact that we're on the grid. So I can open up Expand and maybe play something in. So now I have my bells from Expand up here, and I can hit play and loop and see what's going on. To me, it's the best workflow. To me, I want to zoom in and show you one more thing before we get off the video. But MIDI information, once you understand it, is the best way to produce. Every software you buy, Reason, anything that's using a virtual instrument, anything that's using plug-in based software, it's all triggered by MIDI information. MIDI notes are the way to go, because when you're producing something and you're in the final hours of production, you can actually change it. So to you new guys out there, I want you to understand something. In Pro Tools, to make those tracks that you just see and what I was just playing, just very simple, you know.